Trump, and I've looked at everything he's done, trying to bring American jobs back, stopping most of the fentanyl coming in, defending the borders, de-escalating wars around the world. Trump's a good person overall that means well. He made a big mistake with warp speed and the rest of it, and thinks that that's his thing to hang his hat on, that that's his legacy. And so he's doubled down there. But I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That said, they have a constellation of prosecutors, both federal and state, from New York to Illinois to California to any other areas, that have indicted the people around Trump. Other billionaires, you name it. There's been hundreds of indictments. And the system is doing that to try to force Trump into mobilizing aggressive political grassroots power so that the globalists can make their takeover and their censorship and their authoritarianism and their surveillance about Trump as if he's the representative of the resistance, instead of it just being simply, hey, I'm liberal, I'm conservative, I'm old, I'm young, I'm whatever. I don't want a surveillance state. I don't want in the infrastructure legislation that passed kill switches in all the cars coming out in 3 years and breathalyzers and tracker systems. That shouldn't be a partisan issue. They admit now that the World Vaccine ID is a global social credit score based in China where political dissidents can't leave their house, and they use the COVID thing selectively as the excuse. Got a bunch of articles on that today. So we got to thread the needle on this. But when you see Axios articles like this one, coups are making a comeback around the world. Well, they don't tell you is we had a coup against the people and against populism 14 months ago, and it was the 2020 election. And the idea that we can't question elections, the idea that we couldn't challenge all those incredible anomalies and issues is insane. Remember, Pelosi said, we're not going to accept him winning. Even if the Electoral College says he's the president, we're going to have our own inauguration and say Biden is. Remember that? Oh, but as soon as Trump just tried to have a 10-day investigation in the Senate, which is constitutional, they're now calling that illegal, and the January 6th Commission is asking the Justice Department to arrest people in Trump's orbit for challenging an election and saying we don't believe it's accurate. When if a third world country does 1/10 of the hanky-panky and the chicanery and all of the skullduggery that went on during that November, December, January fiasco, it would not be a certified election. The UN would say it wasn't a free and fair election. The United States State Department would say that. But they don't, because it's here. They've lost the people. They've lost not just the Midwest, they've lost everybody. California isn't really blue. It's red. And all these places are. Illinois, New York, New Jersey. But you've got to have huge supermajorities to overpower the election fraud and all the dead people on the voting rolls and the illegals voting in Texas and in Florida. The Democrats went for a decapitating level political event to decapitate the Republican Party by even stealing Texas and Florida. But they ran out of dead people and people that had moved out of state on the voter rolls, and they hit that wall and they failed. So that's what's happening here, ladies and gentlemen. And so Trump should not be indicted. His family should not be harassed. You have the New York DA that says he won't even respond to armed robberies. He said that last week. He said, I'm not going to even, unless somebody gets hurt, we don't respond. So you can put a gun to somebody's head and say, give me that money, give me your purse, and as long as you don't pistol whip them or shoot them, you don't get in trouble. And then you got Democrats making jokes and attacking the police because 2 cops just got killed and making fun of their funerals. I have the articles. These are America-hating people. They instinctively hate our institutions so much because they want to wreck it all. Our institutions perfect? Hell no. But there are institutions, and the New World Order desperately wants those institutions that are local under their control. So we got all this talk about coups are making a comeback, and I'm going to play this clip. Trump says they're trying to put me in jail. Trump calls for biggest protest ever if racist prosecutors do anything illegal. And it's all literally installed. George Soros, Letitia James, the Attorney General in New York, the New York prosecutor, all of them ran on putting Trump in jail. I mean, these are not impartial people. So absolutely, you can't, George Soros has gotten over 1,000 DAs in just the last 2 years elected. 1,000. He's got over 20 attorney generals that he literally calls, and his son, Alexander, tells them what to do on record. If I called up a DA that I'd paid to get in office and told them what to do, the FBI would raid me and should, because that's corruption. That's bribery. You can give to people's political campaigns. You can't direct them what to do. Why would George Soros want rampant crime and 5 times the carjackings and triple the murders? Because he hates you. He wants to level the country, to consolidate the control. He's overthrown over 20 countries and destroyed their pensions and destroyed their currencies. He's a monster. And you look at the Young Turks and all of them celebrating him and saying Alex Jones is the worst person in the world because he says George Soros was a Nazi collaborator. He said it on 60 Minutes. He said it on NPR. Anybody can find those clips. But it doesn't matter. These are fawning leftists that just love the money because they're not even leftists. They're corporate whores. They're liars. And they signed their soul on to this guy who loves the carjackings and murders and killing, mainly of brown people, who thinks that's funny to demoralize you. And then now we've got the former president who did have the election stolen up there literally so desperate now, he's not backing down, at least to him on the surface, saying be ready to demonstrate if they try to arrest me. And people say, well, they're not going to try that. Yes, they are, because they want to push us into confrontation. They want to push us into crisis on the streets because they've already lost. And so people say, well, Jones, you're not being very manly. Why don't you want to go ahead and take the left on? I'll explain this next hour. Because it's multinational, it's international. It's about destroying the currency and the infrastructure. And so discretion is the greater part of valor. We have to peacefully and with civil disobedience shut down this system and expose it, because the globalist system is collapsing our system. We don't collapse our system to get them. We collapse their system by identifying them and not complying. I'll explain more of that in the next hour, but here's Trump really saying some desperate stuff.
If these radical, vicious, racist prosecutors do anything wrong or illegal, I hope we are going to have in this country the biggest protest we have ever had in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Atlanta, and elsewhere, because our country and our elections are corrupt. They're corrupt.
Well, I criticize him on the deadly vaccines, but when it comes to huevos and it comes to doubling down and it comes to saying we're going to stand up, he's done it. But it's got to be peaceful, and we got to stop provocateurs. And here's the problem. Biden is in control of the federal police and the military. And he's in control of the police in D.C., and they're going to do the same thing again, walk us into a trap. We get 5 million people there, and then they have 100 cops at the Capitol, and then the left breaks in and some useful idiots go along with the going in, and then they frickin' kick off a cyber attack and say we launched it and turned the damn lights out. Because that's what they want to do. So I'm not going to sit here and play soldier or armchair quarterback. I'm just telling you, we're going into some insane times with 282 days out from the midterm elections, which are going to be a massive landslide of populist patriot candidates taking over the Republican Party. And a lot of people in the Democratic Party are now starting to run against this insanity. So the globalists aren't going to let us get there without staging major events. As General Flynn warned on the show Friday, the globalists are getting ready to stage false flags and create a new January 6th. Hour number 2 straight ahead. Tell everybody you know, tune in now. Segment, but here's the latest Greg Reese report.
serving and retired, volunteers or national servicemen, veterans all. We are at a point in history without precedent. The world. Now, many of you know that truly malevolent forces have been attacking and undermining our nation for longer than most of us have lived. They, our adversaries, have executed their monstrous plans against innocent men, women, and children. They fight with a pre-biblical barbarity, without decency and without constraint. They fight without courage and without compassion. Their war against the people is undeclared total war. It has been a traitor's war, a dirty war, a coward's war. We know only too well that unless we halt and then reverse this unreal attack on every aspect of our lives, we will lose everything we love and enter a period of civilizational darkness more depraved than any period in human history. We must act. However, this is not a call to arms. Our soulless adversaries and their mindless enablers would like nothing better than for a shot to be fired, because to do so would legitimize in the minds of many somnambulant Australians further unconstitutional and unlawful constraints on our rights to our lives, our liberty, and our property. We will not give them that excuse. We know we never fight on ground of the enemy's choosing. We must fight, but in doing so we must win the people. At every opportunity, we must stand with the people, unarmed but in uniform. Our weapon? Pure courage. We took an oath to serve our nation, and what is our nation if not the people? By our presence in uniform, alongside and with the people, we are sending a powerful, unambiguous and galvanizing message that in this war for the world, we the people are united and invincible. We must demonstrate the pure courage born of love of family and love of country that beats in the heart of every soldier, sailor and airman. Because what is courage but love in action? And if you love someone or something enough, you will do what must be done regardless of the cost to you. Perhaps we will lose our property. If so, what of it? We can always acquire more. Perhaps we will lose our liberty. If so, what of it? We can eventually be set free. Perhaps we'll lose our lives. If so, what of it? There are destinies much worse than death. These sentiments are too much for most to understand, much less accept. And that is all the more reason for us, for you, to stand with the people. Now, you might be challenged to explain why you chose such a course of action. The answer is simple. You will be doing what military law, civilian law, and just plain common decency require and demand. You are disobeying the unlawful commands given by the admirals, generals and air marshals of the Australian Defence Force to participate in the genocide of the Australian people. They are guilty and you will be innocent. The oath to serve your country as a soldier did not include a contract for the normal luxuries and comforts enjoyed within our society. On the contrary, it implied hardship, loyalty and devotion to duty regardless of rank. Ladies and gentlemen of the Australian Defence Force, it is time for you to serve not the admirals, not the generals, and not the air marshals, but to endure hardship, show loyalty, and do your duty for your country and your people. And remember that, in the words of G.K. Chesterton, we fight not because we hate what is in front of us, but because we love what is behind us. I'm Ricardo Bozo, National Leader of Australia One. Thank you.
And that's the former head of Australian Army Special Forces, and he needs to be the next Prime Minister of Australia.